All right, we're still on our session 2 advanced PHP, and we need to finish up with our super globals. Okay, so let's just jump straight into it. We've already talked about a session and includes and globals. Let's talk about post, get, filing, and server. And for you to understand this, I will have to use a form. So I went ahead and I got myself a form here. All right, now let's just save this and see how the form looks in the browser. Right, so it's just a simple form with two fields, right? Name and email. All right, and then what else we got? We got a PHP file that is going to process the information that we get from this form. All right, now let's start with server. All right, server is a super global. It keeps arrays of path, all right, mostly path and headers. All right, now excuse me. Now if you're working on a form, for example, right, in maybe probably the front end, let's assume this is the front end, right, and you want an authentication, you want username and email, right? Now you would want the form information to be sent to another file, all right, for processing, right? Now that is when the server super global comes in. All right, so the server super global takes in what we call elements. All right, you can check it up at go to W3 Schools PHP and then look for PHP Super Globals. All right, and specifically focus on the server super global. It takes in a couple of elements, and one of them is request. All right, one of them is request. Let me uncomment this. All right, one of them is request method. Now when you use this element with this super global, you are simply telling your script that, listen, you're gonna get a request method, a request, all right, and then with a method, and then you have to state which method you want. All right, now we'll come to that very soon. All right, so the server now, the server global. So this, to me, I would take this as the name of the array. All right. Right, just refresh your memory for a second. We are saying all super globals are arrays, right? I want you to think like a programmer now. All super globals are arrays, right? And even though you need to pass in elements, PHP calls it element, we can call it array names, right? So probably they just created a list of arrays and they said the name of the array, they called it element, right? So the server super global takes in elements, we can call it arrays, and you have to state, for example, if you call, this is another way to call the server super global. You call the server super global, right? And then you said PHP self, right? So PHP self basically means on the same page that you are on. Okay, so instead of writing this, we could simply say index that, right, PHP. You see that? Because that is the file we are on. All right, index.php. Now I hope you're getting the idea, but I need to connect the post and the get and the file for you to understand this. All right, now when you create a form like what we've got here, right, you need to specify a method where you want to send the form. All right, now we're going to use the server array to guide us and keep the path. Okay, so instead of saying index.php, first of all we give a form a method. Now the method could be either get or post. I will talk about that later, right? But let's focus on the action now. The action is where you want the form to be sent. All right. So if you want the form to be sent to the same page, you could either say send the form to index.php. All right. But because we're going to be using the server global, right, the server super global, to get the information from the form, all right, we have to say, listen, create an array, right? Create an array. Oops. Let me just, yeah. Now create an array and then use the element name PHP self, all right? So now the path PHP self, which is the path is the index, is kept in this array, all right? So that is why we are using it here. So this is one of the things that you can use the server super global for. Now when we come to the array, the PHP file that will process the form, all right? Now if we were, let me say this, if we were processing this form to another this form here, if we were sending it to another file, let's say we were sending it to exercise1 file to process it, we cannot put PHP self here. All right, we're gonna have to remove this and replace it with probably something else different, right? But because we are processing this form on the same page, that is why we put PHP self here. So this element is keeping the path, the same page we are on this, inside this server global, super global, right? And we're calling it here, and we say there's going to be a request method, right? And the method is going to be get. So now let's talk about method. Methods are ways of sending your information, all right? The information that you type in here, all right? Ways of sending this information to your PHP file to process it for you. Okay. Now there are primarily two methods to send your files, your data from a form, right? From a form to your PHP file that will process the form. And the first one is the get. We have the get, which is also a super global, and also we have the post. Now the get is basically used to collect data from the URL or through the URL, right? So if you have if you see in this URL, all right, I will just type my name and my email, all right, like so. When I click on submit, you can see that I have full name, then my full name shows here, and then email, my email shows here. So this is not secured, all right? It's not a secure way of sending data through forms, all right? But it's still it's still how do you call it? It's still valuable. For example, if you're taking an ID, all right, an ID, you want to take the ID of a user so you can process it, all right? You can do this, all right? Now, if I submit this, I get an error. By the way, let me write something here, and then it says your name is this. Can you see that? So even without typing in the form, right, just manipulating the URL, all right, the request is being sent, all right? So you can see it's not a secured way to send data through forms, right? But it's still useful. We're gonna learn how to use it usefully, all right? Now we have the post. The post also collects data from forms, but it's very secure because the information doesn't get sent through the URL like this, okay? So let's look at our PHP file closely, right? We open an if statement and we said if someone clicks on the submit button here, all right, this is what you should do. We said use the get request method, all right? We just experimented with that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to change this to post. All right, we're running out of time, so let me just change this to post. Now this form will be sent using the post method, right? All right, which means the information will not be sent through the browser again. All right, now what we're doing is we are entering our full name, all right, and our email, right? So basically we're going to look at forms later on, all right, in depth, all right? So I just want you to understand the concept of super globals. All right. So if you don't understand what is happening inside here, don't worry. We're going to talk about it. Right. But let's just focus on the super globals now. Now, this form, we're processing it here, is going to get the name, the full name, you can see right from here, and keep it in a variable called name, right? And we're going to get another one called email, all right? And then we keep it here. Now, look at the method that we are using to get. We're using the get method, right? First of all, we put get here, and we are putting get here. If we run this, we're going to get an error. We're going to get an error because we are telling the code to use the get method to process the form, right? So if we save this and we type something here, all right, we get nothing, all right, because the form was specified to use the post method, right? So here we need to change this to post. We need to use the post super global, all right? Over here we need to use the post super global, and when we are collecting the form here, we have to go with post also, all right? So you see what is happening here, all right? Now if we say something here, let me put my name, right? Then I'll just go with an email, and I click submit. Now the form is getting submitted, all right? And we don't see it in a URL because we are not using a get super global, all right? We're using the post. So the information gets posted blindly in the background to this form for processing, all right? To this form for processing. And because we're using the post method, we have to declare when we are collecting our values, we have to go with post, then the name of the inputs. We're going to do this when we come to forms, all right? But you can see how the super globals are working, right? Now, if I had this file, all right, in a different file, all right, I just go ahead and create another file here called forms.php, all right, and all I would do is paste this in here, all right. But over here we cannot say server self PHP, because when we do this, it means we want to process the form here, all right. Remember what the server super global does, it keeps the path, all right. So here we have to remove this, and let's just simply say this form will be processed by forms.php, right, which is here, over here, forms.php, all right. Now we save this, we go back here, and then we type in our name, and I'm gonna use different email, right? Then we click on submit. We get an error that says the file was not found. All right, now let's see why the file was not found. Okay, we said forms.php. Oh yeah, we need to rename this file. It's not forms, it's forms, all right? So, but you can see what happened, right? The form was being sent to the file that we specified here, right? So let's go back to our browser, and let's see. Now if we click on submit, you can see the form gets submitted, and now we are in forms.php, and we are getting what we put in there, all right? So this is how super globals work, all right? We've looked at the include, we've looked at the global, we've looked at session. The post will collect data, all right, and keep it in a form of an array, all right, and send it to wherever you specify your form to send it to, right? The get will get the data from the URL, all right, from the URL, and keep it in the get super global array, and send it to whichever file that is going to process the values inside the get array, all right? We've not talked about files. We're going to use files basically to collect file data, right? like image or videos or stuff like that. I don't want us to go into this now. It's just very simple. But you get a concept of what is happening. Files, they work like post, they work like get. What they do is they collect images or videos or just files. All right. So it's also a super global that collects file variables. All right. So I hope you get the concept of how things are working. I would love for you to probably play this video back and try to experiment, and see how things work. All right. If you want to learn more about super globals, you can go. I think from the understanding you have now, from the concept you have now, it will be easier for you to understand and read more about super globals. But let me advise you, don't go reading a whole lot about super globals, because you end up confusing yourself before you even get to understand how it can be practically used. All right. Anyway, I just demonstrated to you how to practically use it. So I believe that you already know what these are. I'll see you on the next video.